Oh,
Hi.
I was trying to figure out how to look it. I was like,
Who's
I don't
this?
think I'm wrong.
Is this who I think it is?
Yeah,
Hi, good to see you, Joe.
good to see you too.
Oh man, did you come up with a new music album?
Oh yeah, always.
Oh, because your stage name is Lil Raw Honey. Because I was thinking about, that sounds like Lil Wayne or like Lil Money, Lil Raw Honey. And it's because your husband's a DJ, so I was wondering if you were able to go and sing along with him when he's making music.
Oh yeah, we always joke around about that, about Lil Raw Honey being my stage name.
Oh, so it is. Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen you, I think, since the last time it was on Instagram, I think 3 months ago when you closed your account.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how, so um, you're a mother of two
Mm-hmm.
and you have another one coming along the way?
Yes, I do. I'm
When's,
halfway there so far.
uh, oh, I remember you were saying that you were very excited for this new birth coming up because
Yeah,
it's going to be your first home birth.
yeah, well, I'm actually really excited for it.
Is it is this going to be your husband's first home birth too?
Yep, it'll be his first as well.
He gets to witness what it's like to have a home birth. Wow. How's he
Yeah,
feel?
exactly. It's really exciting. My husband was super on board with it as well because we both had kind of a bad experience in the hospital last time. So we were kind of excited to just be able to stay home and relax and not have to worry about
Yeah, there's no
the
doctors, no
yes,
doctor.
exactly.
It's going to be quiet. It's just going to be you, your children. Are your children going to be watching this?
Yeah, they'll be here too. I thought it would be, I went back and forth on it if I wanted to be alone during the time, but I thought it would kind of be a really cool experience for them. So they're going to be here too.
That's great. So the first time we met was on Facebook and through a group with the Primal Diet, and
Mhm.
you shared your results. You were on fire because you were very curious, very scholarly, and you asked a lot of questions, and you learned a lot, and you showed that with your results. You had I put you on the episode on the I think it was the epitome of nourishment one, and I
Mhm.
remember that it was like you were a 9 months from being a vegan. You went on a primal diet for 9 months, and you had phenomenal changes. It was your skin was glowing, and your teeth changed. Your uh, everything about your whole body, your health just changed, and a lot of people saw that through your Instagram too. So
Yeah,
so
I was really surprised myself by how quickly I got results.
yeah, I thought it would take 1 year or something, but 9 months. Wow, it was amazing. How does your husband feel about your results?
Really good. I mean, I'm always asking him, like I'm always teasing him about it because I'm like, you have to like me better now than when I was like a really skinny vegan. And he's like, no, you look beautiful both ways. And I'm like, okay.
Your
But no,
husband's
he's been very supportive through the whole process, and I definitely think he's seen like a huge change in me, which is good.
your husband is very supportive and very committed because he was with you since you were vegan and loved you then, and now you've made significant changes to your diet, and
Mhm.
uh, and he's still very committed and very loving. So wow, that's amazing. I respect that from your husband. Um,
I'm very thankful. I'm like, I don't know how you don't think I'm crazy because I was so hardcore vegan for a while. And it was just because I was so sick after I had my daughter. And I guess I was just kind of desperate at that point because I was so sick and I was looking for any way to heal. And of course, now when you go online, everything is like plant-based diet, veganism, it's the best way to go. And I have an aunt who cured her cancer when she was a raw vegan. And so just having that personal experience, I was like, oh, this must be something. This must be good. And so I tried it. And then, of course, in the first few months, I felt pretty good. I saw a lot of improvements in certain things. But then the nutritional deficiencies start to kick in. And then I just was feeling worse and worse and losing more and more weight. And I just remember going to my husband one day and I was like, okay, I know this is going to sound really crazy, but I think I'm going to switch to a carnivore diet. And he was like, wait, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to eat meat from now on. I know it sounds stupid, but I've been going online and all of these people doing it, they just look so much healthier than all of the vegans I see. And he was like, okay, whatever you think is best.
Oh, how about introducing your children to the diet? Like, how do they feel about you with regarding your diet?
My son is funny. He just kind of makes fun of me all the time. He's like, "Go eat some raw meat, mom."
Oh, what about your husband?
So
Like,
he's fine too. Like I said, he's been really supportive. And actually, a few times I've made him
uh,
different meals. Like I've made him some steak tartare, and he loved it. He was like, "Oh, this is delicious." And I had him like drinking raw eggs every day too, and he loved that. Like he was going to work and telling his coworkers he brought raw eggs in with him and stuff.
oh, so you're really, really changing the mindsets of your family. Your husband originally wasn't doing any of those raw things, and then like now you're able to get him to do some of that.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Like I try not to I don't want to force anything on him or anything like that. Like I want him to come to it by himself, but um I'm definitely try to encourage us like when my husband and I first met, both of us weren't eating very well. We're working in restaurants, so we would eat a lot of the restaurant food, and then we would be getting off work really late, so we would get fast food, and we were eating a lot of junk. And my husband and I, we grew up very differently because my father was very strict on um, what I ate, and so I literally wasn't even allowed to have any junk food until I like turned 18. But my husband like grew up on a lot of processed foods. And so I've actually been really impressed with how perceptive he is to everything and how he's just been really accepting of it all. I keep telling him like just maybe go carnivore and then maybe you'll get a taste for raw meat eventually. But he's a trooper for sure.
Hey, that's what matters. He's making every day. He's making some slight changes. I'm not telling everyone to go 0 to 100% right away, but
Exactly.
th-
Exactly. And honestly, I've brought it up with other friends and, other people I know, and even like my best friend, she is very similar to me, but like she would never eat raw, but she eats a very heavy like animal-based diet and she understands animal-based nutrition. And when I bring it up with her and she's like, "Oh, my husband would never even consider it. He just thinks it's disgusting." So I'm like, I'm impressed with my husband for at least trying. So it's been really cool to kind of watch our family in the past few years like make all of these big changes towards our health, and we've definitely noticed a big difference.
also you have parents and family who are already into raw, so you had like so they're okay with it.
Yeah, I felt that I've gotten really lucky um in that sense because even though, I haven't converted anyone to the diet, my family and my husband, and they've just been really accepting of it. They've never like been like, "Oh, you're crazy for doing that." They're just kind of like, "Okay, well, if it works for you, that's really good." My husband's family would probably think I was crazy if they knew. I don't really talk about it with them. But they
Uh,
did it's funny because when I was on a vegan diet, they were very worried about me. They would tell my husband all the time like, "Joe's just getting really skinny. I'm worried about her. I don't think veganism is healthy." And um now they tell me all the time when they see me like, "You just look so much healthier now. Like we're so happy to see you like this again." And I'm just in my head, I'm just like, raw meat.
and what's their reaction when if you were to say that like raw meat?
I think they would be my husband's family, at least, I think they would just be worried about it because
Uh,
they're super nice, but they're the type of people that kind of listen to everything doctors say.
isn't that amazing that they saw your changes, that how you went from skinny vegan to now you're glowing, and and they're not even asking like what did you do? What happened? And
Yeah, I think they just kind of assume it's because I'm eating meat again. So I've had some conversations with my husband's grandma, um, which, actually when it comes to nutrition, she like we were talking the other day about how in back in the old days, people were eating so much fat and lard and butter and just all of these different meat products, and people were a lot healthier than they are today. And so she did understand that definitely, like how all of the processed foods and vegetable oils, they've caused a lot of these issues now in today's society. But I think the raw might be a little bit too much for her yet.
yeah, I would rather people just eat cooked meat, like more of it, than going to go up to them and tell them straight up, "Hey, go eat raw meat." Like that's
Yeah.
going 0 to 100. You have to introduce them gradually, slowly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You kind of have to read the person, I guess. Like with me, when somebody mentioned raw meat, I was just like, "Oh, that sounds cool." But with most people, you gotta like go in, like you said, in stages. Like, okay, here's the meat-based diet, and you're on that for a while, and then maybe we'll introduce a little raw in there.
Before you were talking about how you pulled your kids out of school and you just started to homeschool them because you saw that they were problems in school and you didn't like them and you were dissatisfied by them. And wow, you really you as a person really respect because you stand up for what you believe in and you do something about it. And
Thank
you
you.
like you were dissatisfied about the school and you really just pulled your kids out.
I guess I've always been kind of opinionated, um, but when I first started learning about health, like really getting into it, I think vaccines were the first thing I looked into, and then it kind of just spiraled from there. I just kept going down all of these different rabbit holes, and like everything I found just really horrified me. And I think at first I was a little bit naive, I guess, and I was like, wow, people need to know this. Like, this is horrifying because I when I saw the information, I was horrified by it, like information on vaccines and modern medicine and what they're doing with our diets now. And so that's why I started my Instagram. I'm like, people need to know this. And then um the more and more I shared and dealt with people, I was like, wow, I didn't realize how many people don't want to know this.
That is definitely hard being a truther is like sometimes people don't want to hear the truth.
Hmm.
And if you try to tell them, it's like they get angry and then like it seems like it's better not to even tell them.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to wake up the sheep. You just have to wake up all those sleeping lions. For me personally, the reason I've learned as much as I have now is by listening to other people's opinions. And, I'm definitely not perfect. There's some things that I probably was not perceptive of at first, but I'm always listening and I'm always going back to it later and thinking about it. And just gathering different information is how we learn. And so, yeah, I don't understand, sometimes like the cult like mentality of no other opinions are allowed here
That's a,
because
yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree. That
all I'm saying is like when you wrote what you wrote, I'm like, I don't know if every single thing Rich says is right or wrong, but to me he made some really good points, so it's worth listening to at least.
how's your diet going? Like, have you experienced any negatives from Primal Diet when you first started till now?
Um, it's really hard to say because for I've been on the diet um, relatively short term. It's been about a year and a half now.
Mm.
So, and probably primal for about a year because I was carnivore for a few months before that. So, I don't really think. I wouldn't really say I had negative effects from the diet, but I still have, some health issues that I'm figuring out. Like I had a lot of fatigue in the beginning, which they say is normal on your first few years of Primal Diet, but the fatigue was really bad. Um, but besides that, I've seen a lot of benefits.
I know you recently started doing more vegetable juice. Any any experience with how that affected your current diet?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, you read We Want to Live, and when you're still like a new primal dieter, and um, I definitely made this mistake, and I think a lot of people do, is we um, latch on to the raw milk, and it's like raw milk is everything, but we forget about the green juice. And Agnes actually said green juice is a lot more important. And in the beginning, when I was very first starting out, I do think I needed a lot more raw milk because I was so skinny and malnourished that I needed a way to put on weight quickly. But after a while, without the green juice, like you can become too acidic, and I think that's what I was dealing with because I noticed it once I became pregnant. I was really, really sick throughout my whole first trimester, and I think you know Rom from the Primal Diet group.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, he was pretty helpful. And he was saying, maybe try some green juices, try to up your green juice. And at first and he told me to do cheese trains too, of course. Like just do lots of raw and salted cheese. And I was a little reluctant to try it at first because I was just so sick and I was in that mindset like nothing's gonna help me right now. And I finally, started feeling a little bit better to where I could try it, and it did. It helped me a lot, like upping the green juice, because then I had more of an appetite for other things. And the more I was able to get in my body, the more nourished I felt and the better I felt. And now I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to feel really good again, finally.
Rama's always, yeah, eat those cheese trains.
Yeah. which which now I'm like, yeah, you're right, Rom. Cheese trains are the answer for everything. I do think that I was detoxing a lot in my first trimester, um, because, and it happens to a lot of pregnant women, like you wake up and I just had this horrible metallic-y taste in my mouth all the time, which even besides the nausea, that made it harder to eat alone because um, everything just tastes bad at that point. And so then you're nauseous and then you have a metallic taste in your mouth. So everything tastes bad. And I would wake up and just like, you always have kind of a gross mouth when you first wake up in the morning, but it was like multiplied by 100 on pregnancy. It was so bad. Like I would just have like slimy coating on my teeth. And so I did feel like I was kind of detoxing a lot. But once I started doing the cheese trains in the morning, it like helped immediately. So I always say like raw and salted cheese is magic. It's a magic food.
Thank you, Rom, if you're watching this.
Yeah. Thank you, Rom. You're the
Always so helpful with the information. He types like whole giant paragraphs
best.
of research.
Yeah, he really is. He's very helpful.
Any cravings with now that you're from your pregnancy? Have you felt any needed food changes?
So in my first trimester, when it was hard to eat, all I wanted was sushi, like sashimi.
What?
Every that I couldn't like the thought of red meat was really repulsing to me and the thought of chicken, but I just wanted fish every day, like tons of fish. My poor husband, every day I'm like, can we please get sushi again? But that's all I could eat and it tasted delicious to me.
Wow, that's interesting. Women's cravings when they're on pregnancy is just always interesting to hear because they're craving so many foods. And sometimes they crave like burgers and lots of it, or like chocolate or something. It's always something specific. And
Yeah, I think it's all, in my opinion, I think it's really all related to whatever nutritional deficiency that we have at the time. So, and a lot of women crave junk food because they're not, um, I don't know, they haven't been exposed to like real nutrient dense foods. And so their bodies are kind of confused, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like if you crave junk, you have to kind of think of like, you know, if you're craving a lot of chocolate, you know, maybe you need magnesium, and then you're like, okay, what can I eat to get a lot of magnesium? So for instance, like what Rom told me, which made a lot of sense, was that I probably needed a lot of minerals in the first trimester, which is why I was really craving fish and seafood.
Any other cravings besides that, like after your first trimester?
No, I haven't really had any crazy cravings this time so far, at least. I still like the fish a lot. Um I now that I've started the vegetable juice, I crave the vegetable juice. Like
Hmm.
I wake up every morning and I'm like, I need my veg juice right now. And I don't know, besides that, I've just been able to my first trimester I couldn't stomach any dairy. And so now I've just been able to start drinking milk again. And I've been doing a ton of cheese. Like I'll do the cheese trains in the morning, but then I also get raw cottage cheese from Amos Miller's farm, and I crave that a lot. And so I'll eat that with some honey for the minerals.
Thank God for Amos Miller's farm. For people for people not in Pennsylvania, he just ships everywhere, and I know
Yes, Amos Miller is the best.
the Amish people are just always so happy and so nice to people.
Yeah, I have a good friend who she actually lives in Pennsylvania, and she told me that I told her about Amos Miller, and so she was looking online and she was like, "Oh, I live close enough that I can just do the farm pickup." So she said she went with her son, and I guess like a younger Amish boy showed her around, and she was like, he was just so nice, and he showed us the whole farm and took us everywhere, and then we came back the second time and he remembered our names, and she's like, those
Wow.
people are just so sweet. I'm
I
jealous. I wish I lived closer. I would be there every day.
yeah, I was actually there one time. The boy's name is Sam, and he's the son of Amos. Yeah, and he gave me a tour
I think
around
it
the
was
farm
him.
too.
Yeah, I think that's who she said, it was Sam.
Yeah, um, those people, they just have no, they have morals, they have values, and it's like if I were to leave $1,000 on a table in their place, and I would just step out for 5 minutes, I'll come back and I'll still see it there. Like compared to if I were to like to leave it out somewhere in the city, people would just steal it.
Yep.
And it just shows how welcoming it is. It's just like a really welcoming experience.
Yeah, the children too, because you know, children nowadays, they always have their face in technology. Like you know, they're out in public and they're just like this the whole time, and it's so. I think it's refreshing to see kids that can actually, you know, communicate and have conversations with adults, and because it's getting more and more rare now. I was talking to my best friend the other night, and I told her that I wish it was still acceptable to plan arranged marriages for our children. I said, you know, I can only teach my son what I teach him, but I'm like, what happens if he goes off and finds some like extremely liberal progressive woman and
Oh no.
like, mom, this is who I'm gonna marry. Like, no, I would die.
How did you feel about arranged marriages back in the day? It's I mean, it seems fun as a parent if
Yeah,
being able to
right.
pick if
Exactly.
like you can pick the whoever you want your child to marry. But I wouldn't say like to force them. Like I would just, hey, here are your choices. You can pick from these, and
Yeah,
they're good
these are all
choices.
nice people, so but
Oh,
yeah, I'm like, I don't know about if I were the person whose parents was arranging my marriage, but as a parent, I would love to
hmm.
arrange my children's marriages.
You know, a good idea would be like how they did it back in the day. It's not really arranged marriages. They would go and have a ball. They would have a party, and they would invite all the people who are close friends to the ball and have all the
Yeah.
children there. And it was fun. People they just left their children there, and the people who were invited, they're trusted and they're already like checked. So you don't have to worry about if they have bad intentions or not. Or and I think
Yeah, it
that's
was just I was recently watching a show on Netflix and it was about like young ladies when they were coming out and being exposed to society and looking for a husband. And like you said, they would go out and go to a ball and like they would be exposed to all the eligible bachelors in the town. And then they would come to the house and start courting the woman. And the woman could choose who she wanted to marry, but the parents would have to approve of it. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Yeah, it was like women needed the approval of the father, and
Yeah,
and then the father would have to check the guy and see if he's right, see if his career is on point, his finance on point, if his person's on point, and so people don't get into terrible marriages like they do nowadays. And
exactly.
yeah, have you seen the divorce rates? It's like over 50%, and
Yeah, it's
it's a
ridiculous.
it
And
just
I know
seems.
there's so many factors that go into that now, but it's just really sad. And then the children end up suffering in the long run.
Oh, I loved how you mentioned courting, because there was a goal to dating back then. It was not called dating; it was called courting, and people.
Yeah. Like you said, there was a goal for dating. Like men were trying to get married and find a wife, and everybody wanted to have children. And so they weren't just, pursuing women just to sleep with them. They were pursuing them because they wanted to find a wife. And, there was a lot more effort that went into it. Um, so, I mean, I wish they still did things like that now.
That's I can't put it any better. But yes, the whole goal of courtship was actually for marriage, and people, I instead of courting, instead of dating, it was called courting, because it was the sole goal was for marriage and to have children and to have a family.
hmm
And you
I think
have.
even in tribes, they did something similar to that. They would have um, men would go off on these different journeys and, do different um, competitions and things like that, in order to win the woman that they wanted to be with. So, even tribes kind of had a thing that was similar to, what courting would have been in like the 17th, 18th century.
Yeah, it was called a rite of passage. Like for men, like men have to be built. They have to go through some type of like journey or some type of challenging journey. That's one of the also the differences between men and women, is that I would like to say that women are born and men have to be built. They have to go through those experiences, those suffering, to actually be able to care for a woman. Or
Yeah,
at the
yeah. Back in the day, it was like ultimately the goal was to build a family and build a legacy and, have someone to carry on your family name. Like that was so important for men to have sons to continue the family name and their legacy. And nowadays, it's just completely opposite. It's people are told, don't get married, don't have kids, you need to have a career. We're told basically that our careers are our legacies instead of our families, which is pretty messed up in my opinion. Because, you're unless you're some sort of genius, but um, the for the average person, their career kind of dies with them, but your family lives on long after you're gone.
Is there anything you want to add to feminism or career?
Yeah, well, I also think that all women just have a natural drive to reproduce, especially when we're healthy, because that's what we were made for. We were made to be mothers. And nowadays, society is telling women that they shouldn't be mothers and that, it's okay not to be a mother and you shouldn't settle down with a man. You shouldn't have babies. You should try to be like a man and have this career and be really successful. And they even go so far as to say that um, men are going to like you more when you're independent and successful, which in my opinion is not true at all. And then you have all these women who are suppressing these natural desires, even if sometimes they don't realize it. They're just suppressing their natural desire to be a mom and have a family. And then they just end up really unhappy. So I don't modern society, it really annoys me sometimes because everything, every ounce of media that you consume, all the different TV shows and movies, they all make it seem like it's so horrible and so mundane to have a family and to be a mother. And when really it's the exact opposite. Like it's the most important thing you can do.
Those are really good tips for young women, whoever is watching this. Is there any other tips for parenting? You could talk about, parenting, talk about fertility, talk about birthing. Any?
I guess I can talk about my pregnancy this time around.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so how it's been really different than my other two. And I've just seen a lot of things that were really eye-opening this time around. Because, with my son, I had him when I was really young, and I really didn't know a lot, so I kind of just listened to doctors and whatever they said, and for the most part. And then it was kind of the same thing with my daughter, except I was older and more aware of it. And so I had such a horrible experience with her, with, you know, doctors constantly scaring you throughout your whole pregnancy and making you feel like being pregnant is like some type of horrible disease instead of it being like this natural thing that women are meant to do. Like people nowadays, they make pregnancy seem so dangerous and so horrible, and it's not. Like it, women were made to do this. It's such a natural thing. And so I had um, a really bad time with my daughter and doctors, with just doctors trying to force different procedures on me that I thought were unnecessary, and trying to force vaccines on me when I was pregnant. And then even during labor, they don't want, so many women in hospitals now have the hardest time in labor. Like we don't ever hear these nice birth stories. We hear these horrible, scary birth stories because women are giving birth in hospitals and doctors aren't allowing their bodies to do what they're meant to do. And so it was really eye-opening for me. And I think after my daughter was born and I started learning about more of this, I of course really wanted to have another baby because I wanted another child, but at the same time I felt like a part of me really needed to experience having a natural um birth and a natural pregnancy as kind of like a healing experience as well, because so few women are able to experience that nowadays.
I definitely feel for you about how doctors just fear you. They use fear to scare people into going into procedures, and
Yeah,
it's I guess it's been
they're they're very brainwashed. So right now I'm currently reading this awesome book called Ina May's Guide to Pregnancy and Childbirth. And Ina May is like one of the top midwives in the entire world. And she runs this place called The Farm, which I believe is in Tennessee. And they just do natural births for women. And they just have this group of midwives who've been doing this for like 20, 30 years, some longer than that. And they she actually goes around educating different OBs because she has such an awesome record of safe births. And nowadays, if you go to someone and you say, I'm having a home birth with a midwife, they look at you like you're crazy, especially in the US. Like they're like, that's so dangerous. Why would you be away from a hospital? You need a doctor. And people think you're crazy. But if you look at the actual statistics, it's so much safer, unless you're a woman who's really unhealthy and incredibly high risk. It's so much safer to have a home birth with a midwife than to be in a hospital. They just have, like some hospitals now have like 50% C-section rates.
Hmm.
And for most midwives, that rate is like less than 1%.
Wow.
That's a huge
That's a
difference.
huge, yeah, that's a huge difference going from 50 to 1%. Are you
Yeah.
are you having a midwife for your natural birth?
Yeah, I am this time. I went back and forth on it because my first plan was just to go completely unassisted. And so I kind of went back and forth, and then I was like, you know what, it will be kind of cool to have a midwife there because um, you know, back in the day when you were giving birth, you would have been surrounded by other women who had done it before and were maybe more experienced than you are. And nowadays we don't really have that. We don't have that sense of community. So I think it'll be cool just to have a midwife there for kind of for moral support.
I would promote that because you're not getting any of those fear mongering from doctors anymore, and that's basically the main difference of what you were telling me about your previous birth and this birth.
Mhm.
Is that
Exactly. So
you
this time I'll probably see my midwife in a couple weeks for the first time. And then but besides that, like I haven't seen her at all now. I've just spoken to her. And then I'm not doing any type of testing this time around. I'm not doing any ultrasounds. I'm kind of just letting my body do what nature intended it to. And it's been so much more relaxing. In Ina May's book, she actually talks about how birth can be extremely pleasurable for women, and which is the opposite of what we hear now,
yeah,
because all we ever see is how birth is so painful and it's so horrible and it's traumatizing. And she talks a lot about how fear really affects how much pain you feel. And so when a woman fears labor and she's in a place like a hospital where she's under a lot of stress, because when you go to a hospital, you're pretty much strapped to a bed. You know, they put an IV in you. You're hooked up to these different monitors and machines, and it's just very stressful all around. And so she says that amount of stress and fear, like it causes your body to tense up and you can't relax and you can't enjoy the process and you feel a lot more pain. Whereas with her, you know, women still feel some pain, of course, but they feel, she said in home births where they've been able to be calm and relaxed and happy and in their own space, they feel so much less pain. And a lot of them actually said that they enjoyed birth and felt like this euphoric feeling while they were giving birth.
that is absolutely eye opening. I cannot believe that. Yeah, I hear that all the time. It was like birthing is going to be a very painful process, or it's going to be a horrifying experience, and that's what's being drilled into the minds of young women. And you're telling me that it might even be the opposite.
Exactly. I'm really excited to give birth this time because I want to see the difference, like in me actually being able to enjoy the birth and experience what I was meant to experience rather than being in a hospital where, you know, you have someone over your shoulder telling you how horrible this is going to be. Like I remember with my son, I was young and I had told them I didn't want an epidural or any type of pain medication, and they just kept coming and hounding me like, no, you need this, you don't understand how painful it's going to be, you know, you don't want any awards for not taking pain medication, you should get the epidural. And um it was just very nerve wracking, like being a young person and not knowing anybody before me who had had a natural birth like this. And then all I had to go on was these doctors telling me how horrible this experience was going to be for me.
Just feel sorry for those people who have to go through this before they can find the truth, who have to go
Yeah,
through.
because so many women are they're literally traumatized after birth now. They have these horribly traumatizing experiences. And then you know, most of those experiences are caused by the hospitals and doctors themselves, by their treatments. But then they tell the woman, well, if you weren't here, you probably would have died and we saved your life. But they're the ones that caused the whole problem themselves.
Okay, so from what you're telling me is that when you're in a hospital as a woman giving birth, being pregnant, is that you're on a bed by yourself, sometimes by yourself, maybe if you're lucky with your husband, and you can't exactly give birth because of that, because your emotion is not there, it's not comfortable, it's not a comfortable experience. And no wonder all these people are suggesting C-sections or suggesting to
Mhm.
give women Pitocin or to urge on labor because women are not relaxed. You have to be relaxed and you have to be comfortable in order to give birth.
Yeah. What I was reading last night, which made so much sense to me, and you know, even more of like a scientific way, is she said that when you get in that heightened state of stress, then your body takes its energy and starts pumping blood to your heart and to other parts of your body. And when it should be focusing on pumping blood to your uterus so that it can contract and you can progress in labor. And so when you're really scared, it halts labor. And then we tend to forget about how important the mind body connection is, because she's talked about all these amazing stories about women who have literally like they weren't progressing in labor, and so she would have them literally verbalize their fears about, if they had a fear about labor or fear about being a mother, and tell them to get that out. And she said pretty much as soon as she did, they started progressing more and more and gave birth to their baby. And there was even well documented, they don't do it now because doctors are so ignorant about what a natural birth looks like. But she said, if you look back to the 1800s and 1900s, there's actually documented cases of doctors saying that literally seeing that when a woman was uncomfortable, she would actually like go backwards in labor, like not even stop progressing, but like where there was situations where the baby was literally almost out of the birth canal and the body kind of like sucked it back in. And which sounds bizarre, but it's been well documented that that happens. So how a woman is made to feel in labor literally has everything to do with how easy her birth will be.
That's amazing how the body can do that, or how the body can works like that.
Yeah. There was a doctor, I want to say from like the early 1900s, who was documenting different cases in a book he was writing, and he documented a specific case where a woman was in full blown labor, and then he was called in to help without the woman knowing, and so he kind of surprised her. And back then women were very modest, and so it wasn't so socially acceptable to have a male doctor. And so when she saw the male enter the room when she was in this vulnerable state, she kind of got scared and very uncomfortable. And he said she was literally full blown labor, and at this time she kind of stopped and went backwards. And so he left, and she didn't have the baby for a whole other day after that. Like her labor completely stopped and then started again like 12 hours later or something like that.
I can imagine that labor is the most vulnerable period for a woman,
Oh
especially
yeah, for
in
sure.
yeah. So basically, I just want to say like, yeah, trust your body. It is basically
Mhm.
telling us to do so. There's so many benefits of doing home birthing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the in the US, we're probably the worst country, honestly, for this, because even in Europe now, um, most places in Europe, almost all births are attended by midwives, and you only see a doctor if you're, very high risk or have had, multiple complications in your pregnancy. But yeah, in the US, they think you're crazy if you tell them that you are giving birth with a midwife. Yeah, I was just talking about it with a friend this morning about how, it's hard for women now because back in the day, we would have been in more loving, supportive communities of people. And when we were pregnant or we were giving birth, we would be surrounded by all of these other women who had done it before us. And nowadays, we barely even have our own mothers to support us through that.
I like that you were saying that that we should teach people more about their bodies, like Abba was doing something about like fertility charting, and
Yeah, Alba's been really. I haven't been on Instagram, so I haven't seen her posts lately. But when I was, she would post some really invaluable information about, like you said, charting and cycle tracking, which I think is so incredibly important because I was in my mid 20s before I knew anything about that, before I even knew about my own body.
Yeah, and nowadays younger women, they just get on this birth control, and there's
Mhm.
long-term effects with birth control. Like they have decreased libido, they have mood swings, they're easier to be depressed because
Mhm.
of.
It even affects what type of partners you're attracted to.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting study. What was that study that you looked at that was able to tell you that?
Yeah, I read a study once where it basically was studying women on birth control and women who are off birth control, and it basically showed that women on birth control were attracted to more feminine men.
Not only that, birth control, if you get off of it, it's really hard to get pregnant.
Yeah, I've heard
Based on.
a lot of women, especially if you already have a hormonal imbalance to begin with, which a lot of young girls do, which is why they're put on birth control in the first place because they push it as like a fix all for women. Like, you have any type of problems, just get on birth control and it'll fix it. And so you have all these really young women who have already have hormonal imbalance, and then doctors are putting them on birth control for a young age, from a young age. And they're on that for years and years. And then when they get off of it, their hormones are even more screwed up. And then it's a lot harder to conceive. My opinion on the whole matter is it's just so important because number one, as women, we should know how our bodies work. Um, from right now, what they teach young girls is get on birth control so that you don't have a child. And that's basically the gist of it. And, instead, we should be teaching them how our bodies work and how important these functions are that our bodies are performing every day. And, this is your cycle. This is what your menstruation means. This is what ovulation means. This is when you can get pregnant. And teach women about all of these, pretty much about how amazing our bodies are and what they're capable of. And instead, now what they do is they basically teach girls from a young age to hate their bodies. They're like, no, having sex is bad, or not, sorry, having children is bad, and periods are just horrible and painful, and women have to go through all of this stuff that's horrible, and they don't tell them the reasoning behind it. Like, no, these are not horrible things. They're really incredible functions that your body's is performing, because as women we have the ability to create new human lives. And so I think that if they were teaching girls about their bodies like that instead of teaching them to hate their bodies, then girls would be more secure in themselves. And when you appreciate your body and you have higher self-esteem and appreciate yourself, then you're much more likely to choose better sex partners and not share your body with so many people.
Who taught women to hate their bodies? I want to just. Who taught hate women to hate their bodies?
The government.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask who taught you to hate being what God gave you.
You see where the problem is. The media, the culture, they're hating the thing that God gave them. It's like,
Yeah, you're hating exactly what makes you you. Like, that's what we're all taught from a young age, is just like the whole gist of modern medicine is to teach you that your body is just this thing that malfunctions and tries to kill you all the time. And it's been so empowering. Like, the most empowering part of getting involved in natural health and learning about diet is learning that our bodies are never working against us. Every single thing our bodies are doing are trying to protect us, and we're working against our own bodies. Our bodies aren't working against us. Just
there's
be really scared of nature and rely on doctors will solve all your problems.
I have a problem. So I have some young cousins who are women, and they have very painful periods, and because of that, they went on birth control. So do you know any tips or any solutions on like how to get rid of painful periods? I think it was related to diet, but I just want to
Yeah,
see
I
here.
think diet is everything. I think painful periods are really nutritional deficiencies and maybe some toxicity. But once I once I switched to Primal Diet and started nourishing my body, and I didn't have a period for a while after my daughter was born, and I think it was like half veganism and half breastfeeding. Sometimes you won't menstruate when you're breastfeeding. But once my period came back, well nourished, I like didn't even know I was on my period because I had no symptoms. And I remember, you know, years and years ago, before I knew anything about health, I would have really bad cramps and I would get really moody right around my period time. And then the first time I started it, I had no idea. I went like halfway through the day. And then I was like, wow, I have no symptoms this time. It's crazy. So I think it's really just nutritional deficiencies mostly, and then maybe some toxicity.
So you had painful periods, and your solution was like you just went on this diet, and it just solved it.
Yeah, and I didn't even go on this diet for that because mine, I definitely had pain and cramps, but I wouldn't say mine were ever as bad as I see a lot of women. Like there's women I know who can't even get out of bed during their time of the month because it's so painful. But I didn't even go on this diet because of that. It was just kind of like a nice added bonus. I was like, wow, this is something I wasn't even expecting. But once my body was more well nourished and functioning properly, you know, I didn't experience painful periods anymore. Something that I've seen a lot is so many women are on antibiotics while pregnant, and I never realized how how many women were. But yeah, there was just hundreds of women all talking about taking antibiotics for different things during pregnancy. And you know, when I would comment and say, you know, it's really not safe to take antibiotics, they would kind of come at you, well, no, your baby can die if you have this infection. And then I've seen women go in there and say, hey, my doctor recommended me this medication, but when I looked it up, it said it's not safe for pregnancy. And then other women will literally come start attacking her, like, if your doctor told you that, then why are you asking? You should just take the medication.
What we learned from We Want to Live was that antibiotics, using a few of the doses of those, actually kill 1% of the body each time you do it.
Yeah,
And that's in the name as well. Antibiotics. Biotics means life, anti-life. And
exactly.
yeah, I wanted to ask you about those pregnancy apps. And I think you were saying that there was a lot of horrible advice or tips. Could you tell me more about that
Yeah,
they were giving out?
I was just horrified by a lot of it because number one, yeah, if you mention home births, they you automatically get attacked. They tell you like you're crazy, you're gonna harm your baby, you're stupid not to be in a hospital because so many things go wrong. And again, that just goes back to the fear mongering. But then during pregnancy, it was just horrible. Like all of these you know, wonderful sacred foods that mothers should be eating during pregnancy and have eaten for centuries during pregnancy, you know, they're but now by doctors they're all told that those foods are the most dangerous. Like don't eat anything raw, don't have raw dairy or cheese, or don't eat liver because it's too high in vitamin A. And you know, they're telling mothers to basically eat grilled chicken and vegetables, and you know, maybe and don't worry if you have sodas and donuts and processed foods, as long as it's not too much. They don't put any emphasis on diet at all, and then they tell you to stay away from all these foods that are going to help you have a healthy baby and a healthy pregnancy.
Who's giving these advices in this app? Is it doctors or is it other
Doc-
mothers?
yeah, it's doctors now. Doctors will, if I were to tell a doctor that I was drinking raw milk in pregnancy, like they would probably lay into me. Until I found raw milk, I thought I hated milk.
Oh, I did too. I just after high school, it was like I didn't want to drink any more milk. I was like, I'm done with milk until I found
Yeah,
raw
me
milk.
too. My parent, well, when I was younger, until I was about 9, we lived in Vermont, and we lived right down the road from a dairy farm. And so my parents would get raw milk all the time and we would drink it. And then we got older and moved to Virginia and we no longer had access to that anymore. So they just started buying regular pasteurized milk from the store. And I remember being like, oh, this is disgusting. And my parents would make me drink it. They would always make us have a glass of milk with dinner. And I would be so mad. I hated it. And so once I left my house, I'm like, I'm never drinking milk again. Once I decided to quit veganism, I started reading a lot about the benefits of raw milk. And so I found out where I could get it by me and I got a gallon of it. And I remember my first glass, I was like, oh my God, what is this? It's like the elixir of the gods or something.
It's so fatty. It tastes
Yeah.
so good. It's like I used to work at Dunkin' Donuts as a cashier back when I was a teenager, and there was like an option for skim milk for people getting coffee. And I used to taste it, and I was like, man, this tastes like water. It's like, how
Yeah.
how can people drink this?
Yeah, it
It's
was
like
so
disgusting.
gross.
It's like
Like
disgusting. It
milk
was like,
flavored water.
yeah, and now we have 2%. We have whole milk, so none of that even matters. You just get raw milk. It's just raw milk.
Exactly. And in some places, like they're even bleaching the milk to make it have a different color. And of course, they're like heavily sanitizing everything. So that lovely stuff in your milk and what they're feeding the cows is terrible.
When you went to school as a child, did you ever had to drink milk? Wasn't that an option
No,
as
I
a school
never went
lunch?
to school as a child.
Oh, right, you're homeschooled. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
back in high school, back in elementary, they would feed us milk, and there was chocolate milk and there was strawberry milk. We didn't have water. It was all they fed us, and yeah, school lunches was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I
If
remember like when my son went to school, I packed his lunch every day. And then there was a few times, like sometimes you could go in and just sit with your kids and eat at lunch. And so I would go in and sit with him. And um, I was just like horrified, even back then, by when I didn't know a lot about health. I would just look at these meals that they were feeding these kids, and they were just all junk and like just basically a bunch of like carbohydrates on a plate, processed carbohydrates on a plate, and some juice drink that's not even real juice. And I'm
yes,
like, and then you expect these kids to, after you just filled them with all this horrible stuff, then you expect them to go in a classroom and sit down and concentrate all day.
right. It's not even that they're indoctrinating our children. They're feeding them this processed crap, and that's ruining not only ruining their minds but ruining their health.
I've never heard a single person in my life ever say they liked school lunches.
This is why we don't keep our kids in school.
But then you look at other countries and their lunches are like amazing what they're giving their children in school.
Oh, I remember watching an article about that. It was like comparing US school lunches with all the other countries, and it was like I was jealous.
Yeah,
of
exactly. Like in
it.
France and Japan and stuff, they would have these like three-course meals and all these really healthy, like high quality animal foods. And it looked like they were at like a five-star restaurant or something. In the US, they're like, here's some slop on your plate. I don't know what's in it, but it's food, I guess.
All right, thank you so much, Joe, for sharing with us about fertility, parenting, women's health, education. Uh, I didn't know what else to say. It's like I don't know. Forget whatever this is. We'll just end it with whatever you just said about school lunches. I'll just cut all this out.
Thank God for editing.
Yeah, thank God for editing.
Imagine if I had to do this live.
Yeah. Hey, people could laugh along with us.
Yeah, that's
Wait.
true.
Oh man, now that I'm like sitting back, I feel so much more relaxed. God, what was I doing? I was sitting right here and I was like
I do that too. I like get up to the screen. I'm like,
and then
I just relax.
yeah, and I feel so stressful. It's like now that I feel like it's done, it's like I can talk about anything now. It's like bro.
Trust me, I'm the same way. Like I love talking about all these topics, but then when I know I'm gonna have to like record it or something, I feel so stressed out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna forget everything I know.